20 million years ago, North America belonged to dogs. The continent looked nothing like it does today. Vast warm woodlands and open savannas stretched across the interior, filled with three-toed horses, camels, rhinoceroses, and predators from lineages that have completely vanished. And at the top were canids, more than 30 species of them. Some were small hunters, others were enormous bone crushers, including dogs built more like bears than anything sleeping beside a human today. There was one thing missing: cats. No cat had ever set foot on this continent. Then something crossed from Eurasia over the Bering Land Bridge. It was smaller than the largest dogs already waiting there. It had retractable claws, a different hunting strategy, and belonged to a predator family North America had never encountered before. Within the next few million years, the dogs began disappearing, and the fossil record suggests this was no coincidence. In 2015, researchers analyzed more than 2,000 fossils spanning roughly 40 million years and found something remarkably one-sided. The arrival and expansion of cats had a measurable negative effect on dog diversity. Dogs, meanwhile, showed no measurable negative effect on cats. Some of what disappeared was extraordinary. Among the lost canids was Epicene hydini, the largest known dog ever to exist, a massive predator weighing hundreds of pounds with jaws adapted for crushing bone. Even that lineage eventually vanished. Millions of years later, the final echoes of this rivalry would appear beneath what is now Los Angeles, where Smilodon and dire wolves became trapped in the same asphalt deposits at La Brea. Their bones are still there. But this competition left something behind that fossils alone cannot show: the stalking behavior of cats, the pursuit and social instincts of dogs. Two radically different approaches to being a predator, shaped across millions of years of competing for the same world, and traces of that ancient divide remain in their descendants today. In this journey, we're going back to the world where those two predator families first collided, and following a rivalry that would permanently reshape North America's carnivores. If you enjoy content like this, hit the like button and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, are you a dog lover or a cat lover, or both? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. Now, let's begin. North America was once the birthplace of a predator family, unlike any other. Around 40 million years ago, the continent stood apart from the rest of the world, separated by broad seas that prevented the easy movement of land animals. Within this long isolation, the family known as Canidae began its story. Dogs were not immigrants arriving from another land. They first emerged here, evolving across landscapes that belonged entirely to them, with no true cats sharing the forests or plains. Their earliest known representative was Hesperocian, appearing during the late Eocene, about 40 million years ago. It would have looked unfamiliar beside any modern dog. With its flexible body, short legs, and elongated shape, it resembled a weasel or civet far more than a wolf. Even so, its teeth already revealed the future. Sharp slicing edges had begun adapting this small hunter for a diet rich in meat, marking the first recognizable step toward the remarkable diversity that would follow across millions of years. From that modest ancestor, the dog family branched outward into three great lineages. The first were the Hesperocianae, followed by the Borophaginae, and finally the canine, whose descendants include every living wolf, fox, coyote, jackal, and domestic dog. Together, these groups expanded into nearly every hunting role available across the continent. For roughly 40 million years, North America's predator community belonged almost entirely to dogs. There were no lions waiting in tall grass, no leopards watching from branches, and no tigers moving through the undergrowth. Every major carnivorous niche was filled by one branch of the dog family or another. The world surrounding them looked unlike the continent familiar today. During the Miocene, beginning about 23 million years ago and lasting until roughly 5 million years ago, woodlands blended into broad savannas while spreading grasslands reshaped the horizon. Herds of early horses crossed open country on three toes instead of one hoof. Camels wandered across the plains in astonishing numbers. Rhinoceroses browsed through patches of woodland, while giant ground sloths drifted among river valleys. These animals formed ecosystems with combinations that no longer exist anywhere on Earth. The dogs changed alongside this living landscape. Some remained agile hunters pursuing smaller prey, while others grew into formidable scavengers and predators. Among the most successful were the Borophaginae, whose broad skulls and shortened faces generated tremendous biting power. Their specialized teeth could crack open heavy bones, allowing them to consume nearly every nutritious part of a carcass. Marrow, fragments of bone, and dense connective tissue became valuable food sources that extended the usefulness of every successful hunt. Generation after generation, natural selection refined these adaptations until they fit the continent with remarkable precision. Predator and prey shaped one another in an uninterrupted rhythm that lasted for millions of years. Every valley, woodland, and expanding grassland reflected the influence of dogs that had evolved without ever facing a true feline rival. It was an ancient world built around familiar hunters, balanced according to their strengths, and molded by countless generations before an unfamiliar newcomer finally stepped across a northern land bridge and entered a continent that had belonged to dogs alone. There was an interval in North America's history that almost sounds impossible when viewed from the present. For roughly 7 million years, the continent contained no true cats at all. Paleontologists call this interval the Cat Gap, stretching from about 25 million years ago until roughly 18.5 million years ago. It was not merely a shortage of fossils or a missing page in Earth's record. The rocks themselves tell a remarkably complete story, revealing a land where the familiar feline form had simply vanished. Before this unusual chapter began, another group of predators had occupied the role that true cats would later inherit. They belonged to the Nimravidae, often called false saber-toothed cats. Despite the nickname, these animals were not members of the true cat family. They represented a separate branch of carnivorous mammals that happened to evolve strikingly similar features. Long upper canine teeth extended from powerful jaws, while broad shoulders and low muscular bodies suited them for sudden attacks launched from cover. Evolution had produced a design that echoed later saber-toothed cats, even though the connection between them was distant. Around 26 million years ago, the Nimravidae disappeared from North America's fossil record. Their final chapter remains uncertain despite decades of study. Some researchers point toward a cooling climate that gradually reshaped forests and altered prey communities. Others have considered periods of volcanic activity that may have disturbed ecosystems across broad regions. Competition from the increasingly successful Borophaginae has also entered the discussion as these powerful dogs expanded into more hunting opportunities. None of these explanations has gathered enough evidence to stand alone, leaving the disappearance unresolved. With the loss of those ambush specialists, an ecological opening spread across the continent. Dogs continued expanding into roles that had once been divided among different predator groups. Hunters of many sizes flourished, from agile pursuit specialists to formidable bone crushers. Carnivore diversity remained impressive, although it leaned almost entirely toward one family. For several million years, North America's predator community became more thoroughly dominated by dogs than at any other period known from the fossil record. The absence of true cats was equally remarkable for another reason. During these same millions of years, felids already lived elsewhere across Eurasia. Their failure to appear in North America did not reflect an inability to evolve. Geography held the greater influence. Successful migration required a usable land connection across the far north, linking the continents through what is now called the Bering Land Bridge. Such crossings depended upon lowered sea levels and favorable environments stretching across both sides of that northern passage. Until those conditions aligned, the expanding cat family remained separated from the continent waiting beyond. Perhaps the strongest evidence supporting the cat gap comes from what paleontologists did not find. Fossil preservation across this interval is unusually rich, containing abundant remains of many other mammals. If cats had been present, even in modest numbers, traces of them would almost certainly have appeared among those discoveries. Their complete absence reflects biological reality instead of incomplete preservation. Across those 7 million years, North America lived through an extraordinary pause. The continent continued changing, rivers shifted course, grasslands spread, and generations of dogs refined their place within every available hunting niche. Beyond the northern horizon, however, another predator lineage continued its own journey. Eventually, the geography that had kept the continents apart relaxed its barrier, opening a pathway that would transform the balance of North American predators for millions of years to come. Across the far northern edge of the world, the barrier that had separated continents for millions of years finally changed. Falling sea levels exposed a broad stretch of land between Eurasia and North America during the early Miocene. Around 20 million to 18.5 million years ago, that temporary corridor allowed animals to travel where open water had once stood. Among those travelers was a predator unlike anything North America had seen before. Its name was Pseudialurus, and with its arrival, the long cat gap came to an end. The name means false cat, a label given long before scientists understood its true place in feline evolution. Today, paleontologists recognize Pseudoelarus as one of the earliest members of the lineage that eventually produced every living cat. Lions, leopards, jaguars, lynxes, cougars, and even the house cat sleeping on a windowsill all trace their ancestry through branches that reach back to this pioneering genus. It marked the beginning of a family that would remain part of North America's wildlife from that moment onward. In appearance, Pseudoelarus was lean and athletic. It weighed around 66 pounds, placing it close to the size of a modern cougar. Its body was built for sudden bursts of movement instead of prolonged pursuit. A flexible spine helped lengthen each stride, while long limbs provided speed over short distances. Every part of its anatomy reflected a hunter that depended on careful positioning before launching a rapid attack. This design contrasted sharply with many of the dominant dogs already roaming the continent. The greatest surprise carried by this newcomer rested at the ends of its paws. Unlike dogs, whose claws remained exposed and gradually wore down with every step, Pseudialurus possessed retractable claws. They stayed protected while the animal traveled, preserving sharp, curved tips until the instant they were needed. During an attack, those claws extended to seize struggling prey with remarkable precision. They acted like hooked anchors, securing a grip that greatly improved control during the final moments of a hunt. No member of the dog family had evolved anything comparable. Its hunting style reflected the same mechanical advantage. The established dogs often relied upon endurance, following prey across longer distances until exhaustion created an opportunity. Pseudoilurus preferred patience. It approached with careful movements, remaining concealed until the distance had nearly vanished. A sudden leap brought powerful forelimbs around its target, followed by a firm bite directed toward the throat. Success depended upon surprise, accuracy, and control instead of prolonged pursuit. Two predator families now shared the same continent, each solving the challenge of hunting through completely different methods. The consequences unfolded gradually across immense stretches of time. The fossil record would later reveal that the feline approach proved exceptionally successful within the changing ecosystems of Miocene North America. Species descended from Pseudoilurus spread across broad portions of the continent, with fossils recovered from places including Nebraska and Texas. At least 5 distinct species emerged from that original arrival, adapting to different habitats while preserving the same essential body plan. From that point onward, true cats became a permanent feature of North American life. The continent that had once belonged entirely to dogs now supported two rival predator families. Their paths overlapped across forests, river valleys, and expanding grasslands, beginning one of the longest ecological competitions preserved anywhere in the fossil record. Millions of years passed after the first true cats entered North America, leaving behind countless traces scattered through layers of stone. Those fossils rested across different landscapes and different ages, preserving fragments of a competition too gradual for any single skeleton to reveal. Only when thousands of discoveries were assembled into one enormous record did the deeper pattern begin to emerge. What appeared to be isolated extinctions and changing populations slowly formed a single evolutionary story stretching across geological time. In 2015, a team led by Daniele Silvestro at the University of Gothenburg published the most comprehensive examination of that story. Their research appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America and analyzed more than 2,000 fossil occurrences. The study included 120 species of dogs, together with 115 species representing 5 additional carnivore families. By examining when species appeared, diversified, and disappeared, the researchers reconstructed the changing fortunes of North America's predators with an unprecedented level of detail. The results revealed a pattern that reached far beyond coincidence. Using advanced Bayesian statistical modeling, the team discovered that the arrival and expansion of true cats closely matched a measurable rise in dog extinctions. Earlier explanations had often treated these events as separate developments unfolding at roughly the same time. The fossil evidence instead indicated active competitive displacement. As cats spread across the continent, the evolutionary path, followed by many dog lineages, became increasingly difficult to sustain. One signal stood out with particular clarity. The rate at which new dog species formed gradually declined after felids became established, while the rate of extinction moved in the opposite direction. Over immense spans of time, the balance shifted until dogs began losing species faster than new ones appeared. This transformation unfolded gradually enough that no single generation could have recognized it. Yet, the accumulated evidence across millions of years revealed an unmistakable trend. Even more striking was the unequal nature of the relationship. The statistical analyses detected a strong suppressive effect from felids upon dog diversity, yet the reverse pattern failed to appear. Dogs showed no measurable influence, reducing the diversity of cats. The evolutionary pressure flowed in one direction. Such asymmetry is uncommon because ecological competition often affects both groups involved. Here, however, the fossil record suggested that one family consistently gained advantages, while the other slowly surrendered evolutionary ground. The findings also challenged a deeply rooted assumption about extinction itself. Climate change had long been viewed as the principal force shaping the disappearance of large mammals across North America. Silvestro and his colleagues concluded that direct competition among carnivores exerted an even greater influence over the history of the dog family. Environmental change still mattered, yet interactions between predators appeared capable of steering evolution just as powerfully, if not more so, than shifting climates. Evidence for this pattern appeared across multiple branches of the dog family. The Hesperocyaninae had already begun declining through competition with other dogs before cats arrived, but their disappearance accelerated after felids and the Barbarophilidae entered the continent. The Borophaginae endured much longer, maintaining successful populations through many changing environments, although they eventually followed the same downward course. Their losses accumulated gradually, species after species, across millions of years. It was not a sudden collapse preserved in one dramatic moment, but a prolonged evolutionary contest that unfolded so slowly its progress became part of the geological history of North America itself. Power deserves its own moment of recognition before the story turns toward decline. Long before their numbers faded from the fossil record, the Borophaginae stood among the most accomplished predators North America had ever produced. They were not struggling survivors awaiting replacement. They represented the highest expression of a dog family that had spent millions of years refining its place within a continent shaped almost entirely by its own evolutionary experiments. Their name comes from a Greek word associated with gluttony, an appropriate description for animals capable of extracting nourishment from nearly every part of a carcass. Their skulls evolved along a path strikingly similar to modern hyenas, although the two groups were only distant evolutionary counterparts. Shortened snouts concentrated tremendous biting force near the back teeth. Broad palates strengthened the skull against repeated crushing pressure. Rounded foreheads supported enlarged jaw muscles, while reinforced lower molars contained broad grinding surfaces, especially adapted for breaking dense bone. Few predators have ever been better equipped to consume an animal completely. By about 22 million years ago, this remarkable branch of the dog family reached its greatest diversity. More than 30 Borophaginae species lived across North America at the same time, occupying habitats that ranged from wooded valleys to expanding grasslands. Their variety exceeded anything later seen among large continental predators. Different species specialized in different foods, different prey, and different ecological roles, creating a community whose complexity reflected millions of years of uninterrupted evolution. Their bodies displayed equally impressive diversity. Some remained little larger than modern foxes, feeding as adaptable omnivores whenever opportunities appeared. Others grew steadily larger until they reached astonishing proportions. The greatest of them was Epicyon haydeni, the largest dog known to have existed. It reached nearly 8 feet in length and weighed as much as 375 pounds. Standing beside a modern gray wolf, it would have appeared almost unimaginable, outweighing its living relative by roughly 3 times, while carrying an immensely powerful head supported by thick limbs. During the Middle and Late Miocene, between roughly 12 million and 6 million years ago, Epicyon haydeni shared North America with an expanding collection of true cats. Direct confrontations between these predators almost certainly occurred, although the fossil record preserves only scattered hints of those encounters. Strength favored the giant dog in many situations. Its jaws could generate crushing force, capable of splintering heavy bones that most carnivores ignored. Even so, overwhelming power alone could not determine the outcome of an evolutionary rivalry unfolding across countless generations. The qualities that had once guaranteed extraordinary success gradually became less advantageous as feline hunters spread through the continent. Borophaginae excelled at extracting every possible resource from a successful kill, reducing waste to an absolute minimum. Cats approach survival from another direction. Their bodies emphasize securing prey with remarkable efficiency before the carcass could even become a source of food. As ecosystems continued changing, the frequency of successful hunts grew increasingly important. The ability to capture prey consistently proved more valuable than the ability to consume every remaining fragment afterward. The fossil record preserves that transformation with remarkable clarity. Diversity reached its highest point before beginning a gradual descent. More than 30 species became 20, then fewer still. 20 diminished to 10. 10 became only a handful. Eventually, only Borophagus remained, carrying the final chapter of this once extraordinary lineage. Around 4 million to 2 million years ago, the last Borophaginae disappeared, closing a history that had endured for millions of years after the first true cats crossed into North America. A single feature, small enough to disappear beneath a paw, helped reshape the balance between two great predator families. Across millions of years of evolution, countless differences emerged between dogs and cats, yet one anatomical innovation repeatedly separated their hunting performance. The retractable claw did far more than sharpen a hunter's appearance. It altered the mechanics of capturing prey, changing the odds of success every time a hunt reached its decisive moment. Dogs and wolves carry claws that remain exposed throughout their lives. Every step presses them against soil, stone, and packed earth, gradually wearing away their sharp tips. Those claws remain useful, although their primary purpose is stability. They provide traction while running, helping an animal accelerate, corner, and maintain footing during long pursuits. They contribute relatively little when prey is finally reached because they lack the curved, needle-sharp form needed to seize and hold a struggling animal with precision. Cats evolved a completely different solution. Their claws rest inside protective sheaths whenever they are not actively needed. Hidden from constant contact with the ground, they remain sharply curved until the instant they extend. During an attack, each claw emerges like a hooked anchor, sinking into the hide or muscles of fleeing prey. Instead of merely assisting movement, they become specialized gripping tools that secure an animal during the most critical seconds of the hunt. This simple mechanical difference transformed the entire sequence of predation. Holding prey firmly creates opportunities unavailable to hunters lacking such equipment. Once a cat establishes its grip, powerful forelimbs work together with the claws to resist twisting, kicking, and desperate attempts to escape. That secure hold allows the predator to position its jaws with remarkable accuracy. Every movement supports the next until the struggle becomes increasingly difficult for the prey to overcome. The claws are not separate weapons operating alongside the bite. They function as an integrated part of the entire hunting system. Most large cats complete a hunt by maintaining a suffocating bite around the throat. That technique depends upon prolonged contact with the neck while resisting every effort by the prey to pull free. Without dependable gripping ability, maintaining such contact becomes far more difficult. A solitary dog lacks the same mechanical advantage because its claws contribute little toward controlling the animal beneath it. This difference helps explain why large members of the dog family generally depend upon cooperative pack hunting, combining several individuals to overcome prey that would challenge a lone hunter. Large cats, equipped with retractable claws, commonly succeed without assistance. When Suda elarus entered North America, it introduced this remarkable adaptation into ecosystems where no predator possessed an equivalent structure. The established bone crushing dogs remained powerful, experienced, and highly specialized, yet they faced a competitor solving the first step of hunting with greater efficiency. Every successful capture delivered energy, while every failed chase demanded costly effort. Across millions of years, even modest improvements in success accumulated into profound evolutionary consequences. Remarkably, this elegant design has endured with very little change. The same basic system that helped Pseudoelurus secure prey during the Miocene still operates in every modern feline. A lion gripping a zebra, a cougar climbing through woodland, and an ordinary house cat reaching for a toy all rely upon identical mechanical principles. 20 million years have passed, yet the curved claws hidden within a domestic cat's paws still preserve one of evolution's most enduring hunting innovations. Evolution rarely stands still after discovering a successful design. Once the first true cats established themselves across North America, their descendants continued changing in remarkable directions. Generation after generation introduced subtle variations, each tested by survival across changing landscapes and prey. Among those countless experiments, one transformation became unlike anything else in mammalian history. Certain members of the cat family began growing upper canine teeth of astonishing length, giving rise to the true saber-toothed cats. These predators belonged to the Smilodon, a specialized branch of the felid family. Their defining feature was a pair of elongated upper canine teeth that gradually became flattened from side to side and edged with delicate serrations. In the largest species, those teeth exceeded 11 inches in length. They were never intended to crush heavy bone or crack open skeletons. Instead, they formed precise cutting instruments designed to reach major blood vessels and soft tissues with extraordinary accuracy. The weapon reflected refinement rather than overwhelming force. North America became home to several saber-toothed lineages during the Miocene and Pliocene. Among them were Megantherion, Homotherium, and eventually Smilodon. Each possessed its own proportions, preferred habitats, and hunting behavior. Some carried longer legs suited to traveling greater distances, while others developed broader forelimbs and more compact bodies. Despite those differences, every lineage invested heavily in the same remarkable adaptation. Their entire anatomy gradually evolved to support the effective use of elongated canine teeth during carefully controlled attacks. The best known representative remains Smilodon fetalis. Adults could weigh as much as 600 pounds, making them among the largest cats ever to inhabit North America. Their forelimbs were exceptionally muscular, exceeding the strength found in any living feline. Massive shoulder muscles anchored powerful front legs, capable of restraining and struggling prey. Their saber teeth measured around 7 inches long and carried fine serrations along the rear edge. Equally impressive was the jaw itself, opening to roughly 120 degrees, almost twice the gape achieved by a modern lion. That extraordinary flexibility allowed the long canines to clear the prey's body before delivering the decisive strike. The effectiveness of this design depended upon precision instead of crushing strength. Bone-crushing dogs relied upon enormous bite forces capable of breaking dense skeletal material after a successful hunt. Saber-toothed cats, approached the same challenge differently. Their goal was to reach carefully chosen anatomical targets where blood vessels and soft tissues lay exposed for only an instant. A well placed bite could end resistance rapidly while demanding comparatively little prolonged struggle. Less energy spent securing a meal meant greater efficiency across many hunts throughout a lifetime. From the modest proportions of Pseudolurus to the immense frame of Smilodon, the felid lineage followed a path of increasing specialization over roughly 20 million years. Bodies, muscles, jaws, and teeth evolved together as parts of a single hunting system. Each refinement strengthened an approach centered upon control, accuracy, and decisive execution. The Borophaginae possessed tremendous adaptations of their own, yet no comparable evolutionary pathway emerged within their lineage to counter this steadily advancing feline strategy. By the time Smilodon appeared across North America, the great bone-crushing dogs had already entered the closing chapters of their history. Their decline had unfolded through countless generations, while the saber-toothed cats represented one of the highest expressions of predatory specialization ever produced among mammals. For only a brief span of geological time, the fading giants of the dog family and the perfected saber-toothed cats shared the same continent before one lineage passed permanently into the fossil record. Extinction rarely claims every branch of a family tree. While two great dog lineages gradually disappeared from North America, another continued forward, carrying the future of the entire family. Its survival was not a matter of greater strength or superior weapons. The canine endured because they followed a different evolutionary path, one that avoided direct dependence upon the ecological role increasingly dominated by cats. The earliest members of the caninae were modest animals, little larger than modern foxes. They lacked the immense jaws of the bone crushers and never developed bodies dedicated to overwhelming large prey through raw power alone. Their lives were built upon flexibility. Small mammals, birds, fruit, insects, and carrion all became potential sources of food whenever circumstances demanded. Such versatility prevented them from becoming tied to a single hunting style or a narrow collection of prey species. They could adjust as landscapes, climates, and animal communities changed around them. That adaptability reached beyond diet. Canine occupied forests, open woodlands, expanding grasslands, and many environments in between. Their bodies remained capable of pursuing different prey sizes without becoming highly specialized for only one ecological role. Evolution often rewards specialization when conditions remain stable because refined adaptations increase efficiency, yet specialized organisms also become vulnerable when their surroundings begin changing. Generalists surrender a measure of peak performance, although they gain the freedom to respond when familiar conditions disappear. Over millions of years, that freedom became one of the canine's greatest strengths. A second innovation gradually distinguished this lineage from its extinct relatives. Cooperative hunting became increasingly important. Although many early members probably hunted alone, later canine refined social behavior into an extraordinary survival strategy. Multiple individuals could coordinate movement, surround prey, and maintain relentless pursuit over considerable distances. Through cooperation, animals of moderate size succeeded against prey that would have overwhelmed any single hunter. Physical ability multiplied when several bodies acted with shared purpose. This approach contrasted sharply with the hunting systems favored by large cats. Felids remained exceptional solitary predators because each individual possessed anatomical adaptations that allowed remarkably efficient prey capture without assistance. Caninae reached similar ecological success through collective effort. One hunter distracted while another intercepted. Fresh animals replaced tired companions during prolonged pursuits. The group functioned as an integrated unit whose effectiveness exceeded the simple addition of its members. Evolution had discovered another successful answer to the challenge of securing food. Conditions during the late Miocene increasingly favored that strategy. Grasslands spread across broad regions of North America, supporting growing populations of swift grazing mammals that gathered into herds. Chasing such prey demanded endurance, coordination, and persistence across open country. Cooperative caninae adapted readily to these opportunities, expanding the range of animals they could successfully hunt. Bone-crushing specialists faced a narrower set of options as ecological circumstances continued shifting around them. Eventually, the Caninae carried their success far beyond the continent where the dog family first evolved. They crossed into Eurasia and later reached South America, spreading across an extraordinary variety of habitats. Every living wolf, coyote, fox, jackal, African wild dog, and dhole belongs to this surviving branch of the family. Their shared ancestry traces back to the lineage that remained adaptable, while other canid experiments gradually vanished from the fossil record. Their persistence did not represent a conquest over the cats. Instead, it reflected an evolutionary adjustment into a different ecological role. Cats continued excelling as solitary ambush predators, while caninae flourished as cooperative pursuit hunters. That separation reduced direct competition while allowing both families to thrive. The balance established across millions of years remains visible today, preserved in the contrasting hunting styles of the world's living cats and dogs. The contest between cats and dogs unfolded across a continent that refused to remain the same. Mountains continued rising, climates drifted toward cooler conditions, and rainfall patterns shifted across immense stretches of time. Forests that had once covered broad regions gradually gave way to more open country. As North America transformed, every predator faced a landscape asking new questions about movement, hunting, and survival. Throughout the Miocene, woodland savannas slowly yielded to expanding grasslands. Global cooling altered weather patterns, while drought-resistant grasses spread across the continent. These new plants flourished under conditions that challenged many older forms of vegetation. By the late Miocene, broad prairies stretched across much of what would become the Great Plains, creating one of the largest continuous grassland systems on Earth. The changing environment did not merely replace one collection of plants with another, it reshaped the relationships between predators and prey from the ground upward. Open country rewarded different hunting abilities than wooded landscapes. Dense vegetation had allowed ambush predators to approach within striking distance before revealing themselves. Across sweeping grasslands, grazing animals could detect movement much earlier. Greater visibility reduced opportunities for concealed attacks and favored prey capable of reacting quickly to approaching danger. Long pursuits across open ground became increasingly common, placing new importance upon endurance, coordination, and sustained movement over considerable distances. Prey animals changed alongside the landscape. Many evolved longer legs that increased running speed across firm ground. Their teeth developed high crowns suited for feeding upon abrasive grasses that wore away ordinary enamel. Large herds became an increasingly common form of protection, with many watchful eyes detecting danger before a predator closed the distance. Such adaptations transformed grassland ecosystems into places where speed, awareness, and collective behavior often determined survival. These developments created favorable conditions for the adaptable caninae. Their pursuit-based hunting strategy matched the expanding grasslands with increasing effectiveness. Cooperative groups could follow herds across open terrain, maintaining pressure until an opportunity appeared. Their flexible diets also allowed them to exploit changing food sources whenever preferred prey became scarce. As grassland communities diversified, the surviving dog lineage found opportunities that continued expanding rather than shrinking. The Borophaginae experienced a very different outcome. Their remarkable bone-crushing adaptations had evolved within ecosystems where woodland savannas supported prey communities well suited to their specialized lifestyle. As those environments gradually contracted, many familiar hunting opportunities diminished. Grassland herbivores increasingly favored speed and herd formation, combinations that proved less compatible with the ecological strengths of the bone-crushing dogs. Their highly refined specialization, once a tremendous advantage, offered fewer solutions as the continent continued changing around them. Fossil evidence suggests these environmental changes coincided with another important pressure. Following the Middle Miocene cooling event, around 15 million years ago, Borophaginae extinction rates increased alongside continued climatic decline. At the same time, felid competitors remained established across productive hunting regions. Climate reduced suitable habitats, while competition limited access to remaining ecological opportunities. These influences worked together across countless generations, gradually narrowing the possibilities available to the specialized dogs. No single event marked the end of their dominance. The transformation unfolded through many small changes, each almost unnoticeable within a single lifetime. Habitats shifted, prey communities evolved, competitive pressures persisted. Piece by piece, the ecological foundation supporting the Borophaginae became smaller until their long history reached its conclusion. The continent itself had become an active participant in the rivalry, changing the battlefield, while evolution continued, selecting the predators best suited for the world that was emerging. No contest lasting 20 million years could remain unchanged. Every successful adaptation altered the pressures acting upon every other creature sharing the same landscape. Predators responded to prey, prey responded to predators, and competing hunters continually adjusted to one another. Across the Miocene and Pliocene, North America became the setting for one of the longest evolutionary arms races preserved in the terrestrial fossil record, unfolding so gradually that each generation inherited only the latest chapter of an ongoing transformation. Within the Borophaginae, the fossil record reveals a steady progression toward increasingly specialized bone-crushing anatomy. Faces became shorter, bringing greater leverage to the jaws. Foreheads grew more rounded as larger muscles anchored across the skull. Premolars thickened into formidable crushing tools, capable of reducing dense bone into fragments that exposed nutritious marrow. These changes accumulated across millions of years, reaching their greatest extremes during intervals when true cats occupied an ever broader range of ecological roles. The bone-crushing niche remained one of the few hunting strategies where felids never developed an equivalent specialization. The cats answered with diversity instead of heavier jaws. Their lineage expanded into an impressive range of body sizes and hunting styles, ensuring that almost every category of prey encountered an efficient feline hunter. Megantherium possessed proportions suited to medium-sized animals, while Homotherium grew into a long-legged predator approaching the size of a modern lion. Later came Smilodon, whose heavily built frame targeted even larger prey through overwhelming strength and precise killing techniques. Together, these lineages spread across multiple ecological roles, leaving very few openings unoccupied. The animals they hunted changed as well. Ungulates did not remain passive participants within this unfolding relationship. Through the Miocene and into the Pliocene, many herbivores evolved longer limbs that increased running speed across open country. Herd living became more common, improving collective awareness against approaching danger. Grazing species also developed high-crowned teeth capable of enduring the constant wear caused by abrasive grasses. Every improvement that increased prey survival introduced fresh challenges for the predators pursuing them. The horse lineage offers one of the clearest examples of this continuing exchange. Early Miocene horses were compact browsing animals, standing only about as large as a modern dog. Across millions of years, they gradually transformed into swift grassland runners with elongated legs, strengthened limbs, and bodies adapted for sustained movement across open plains. Their evolution unfolded alongside the increasingly specialized predator community, illustrating how prey and hunters continually influenced one another without any single species directing the process. Each adjustment produced another response. Faster prey rewarded more efficient hunters. Better hunters favored even swifter herbivores. Competition among predator families encouraged further specialization, while changing prey communities reshaped the opportunities available to every carnivore. These interconnected pressures created a web of evolutionary influence extending across entire ecosystems instead of isolated species. Looking backward through deep time, the outcome appears unmistakable. The Borophaginae gradually lost diversity, while felids continued expanding into new forms. Looking forward from any single moment within the Miocene, however, no animal could have recognized that pattern. A hunter born near the beginning of this immense rivalry would have lived and died without witnessing dramatic change. Generation followed generation as ordinary life continued across familiar plains and woodlands. Only the fossil record, assembled millions of years later, reveals that those ordinary lives together formed one of evolution's longest and most intricate contests. Beneath the streets of modern Los Angeles, the Earth preserved a remarkable archive without intention or design. Long after countless hunts had ended and entire predator lineages had faded from the landscape, a natural trap continued collecting the final witnesses to an ancient rivalry. Layer by layer, year after year, it gathered bones that would one day reveal the closing pages of a story stretching back 20 million years. The Brea Tar Pits formed where crude oil slowly migrated upward through fractures in the ground. Reaching the surface, the lighter components gradually evaporated, while exposure to air transformed the remaining material into thick asphalt. Rainwater often collected above these dark deposits, and fallen leaves sometimes covered them completely. From the perspective of a passing animal, the surface could appear solid and harmless. One misplaced step was enough to break the illusion. Large mammals trapped within the sticky asphalt struggled to free themselves, their movements drawing attention from nearby predators. Carnivores approaching what appeared to be an easy opportunity soon found themselves caught in the same unforgiving surface. This repeating sequence created what paleontologists describe as a predator trap. Herbivores entered first, predators followed, and both became preserved together. Because of this unusual process, the fossil collection contains an extraordinary abundance of the very hunters whose evolutionary history shaped the continent for millions of years. Among the most remarkable discoveries are more than 4,000 dire wolf specimens recovered from the deposits. Their remains are so numerous that museums display entire walls lined with their skulls, offering an unforgettable view of a predator that once ranged widely across North America. Alongside them rest more than 3,000 specimens of Smilodon fatalis. These two carnivores dominate the collection, indicating that they hunted the same prey, occupied the same environments, and repeatedly encountered one another during the closing stages of the Ice Age. The deposits preserve roughly the last 50,000 years of North American history, creating an unusually detailed sequence leading toward the Great Ice Age extinctions. Individual fossils can often be dated with impressive precision, allowing researchers to examine subtle changes in predator populations across thousands of years. Instead of providing only isolated moments, La Brea offers something closer to a moving picture assembled from countless generations, revealing how communities shifted as climates, prey populations, and ecosystems continued changing. Even so, the collection captures the rivalry after its greatest transformations had already occurred. The mighty Borophaginae had vanished millions of years before the first animals became trapped in these asphalt seeps. Their immense bone-crushing jaws had already disappeared from the continent. What remained were the descendants that inherited the final ecological balance, the dire wolves representing the surviving dog lineage, and the saber-toothed cats standing among the last great felids of their remarkable evolutionary journey. Every skull recovered from La Brea belongs to an animal that descended from ancestors shaped by 20 million years of competition. Those lineages endured shifting climates, changing landscapes, evolving prey, and countless generations of natural selection. They survived the disappearance of rival families and witnessed ecosystems unlike any living today. Then, within only a few thousand years, another newcomer entered North America. Humans arrived carrying tools, fire, and abilities unlike those of any previous predator, marking the beginning of an entirely different chapter in the continent's history. The final act of a story lasting 20 million years belonged to only a handful of great predators. By the late Pleistocene, many earlier branches had already disappeared, leaving behind a community shaped by countless generations of competition, adaptation, and survival. Among the remaining hunters, two stood above the rest. One represented the enduring success of the cat family. The other carried the last great expression of North America's surviving dog lineage. Smilodon fatalis occupied the highest place among the continent's felids. Adults reached weights approaching 600 pounds, supported by a heavily built frame unlike that of any living large cat. Broad shoulders anchored immense forelimbs, capable of restraining struggling prey with exceptional force. Relatively short legs reflected a body designed for explosive strength instead of prolonged pursuit. Above all, rose the famous saber teeth, reaching nearly 7 inches in length, completing an anatomy capable of bringing down bison, horses, and even giant ground sloths through carefully controlled attacks. Facing this remarkable hunter was the dire wolf, Anoscion dirus, whose name combines Greek and Latin words meaning dreadful dog. Larger than today's gray wolf, it possessed a more powerful bite relative to its size and a body well suited for cooperative pursuit across open landscapes. Stable isotope studies performed on fossil teeth reveal a diet dominated by large grazing mammals, especially horses and bison. Those preferred prey closely matched the hunting targets of Smilodon, placing both predators within the same ecological arena where food resources were increasingly shared. Their rivalry left traces that extend far beyond bones alone. Fossil teeth preserve evidence of everyday survival, recording each meal through microscopic damage accumulated across a lifetime. Many Smilodon specimens recovered from La Brea display unusually heavy dental wear. Some even show patterns associated with processing bone, behavior uncommon among cats because their specialized teeth were not designed for crushing hard skeletal material. Such wear suggests that valuable carcasses were consumed with unusual thoroughness, reflecting intense competition over every available source of nourishment. The dire wolves reveal an equally revealing pattern. Their teeth exhibit fracture rates higher than those observed in any other large carnivore recovered from the same deposits. Repeated breakage points toward habitual bone processing, extracting every possible calorie from carcasses after successful hunts or scavenging events. The pattern echoes a much older chapter of canine history. Millions of years earlier, the Borophaginae had followed a similar path, relying heavily upon bones when competition and limited resources demanded complete use of every kill. That familiar signature appeared once more in the teeth of their distant successors. Neither predator appears to have occupied a separate ecological corner. Both pursued the same large herbivores, both competed for carcasses, and both experienced the nutritional pressures recorded within their skeletons. Their remains became trapped together in the asphalt seeps of La Brea, preserving an unusually detailed snapshot of two dominant carnivores sharing an increasingly demanding world during the closing stages of the Ice Age. The asphalt preserved far more than individual animals. It captured the closing moment of a rivalry already 20 million years old, storing it within skulls, teeth, and broken bones until another species arrived to uncover the evidence. Thousands of years later, humans would lift those fossils from the earth, discovering that the last saber-toothed cats and the last dire wolves had left behind a record of their final competition, written not in words, but in enduring stone. The ending arrived with astonishing speed. After enduring millions of years of changing climates, shifting landscapes, and relentless evolutionary pressure, North America's greatest predators approached a point where events unfolded far faster than adaptation could follow. Around 10,000 years ago, Smilodon, the dire wolf, and many of the continent's largest mammals disappeared from the fossil record, closing a chapter that had remained open since the earliest days of the Miocene. The evidence preserved at La Brea allows this disappearance to be reconstructed with unusual clarity. A study published in Science during 2024 analyzed radiocarbon dates from 172 fossil specimens recovered from the deposits. The results showed that at least 6 major species vanished from Southern California within a comparatively brief geological interval centered around roughly 13,000 years ago. During the same period, the region experienced substantial ecological change as woodlands gave way to fire-adapted chaparral vegetation, while human populations became an increasingly significant presence across the landscape. The timing suggests that no single force fully explains the collapse. Vegetation changed as climates shifted near the close of the Ice Age, reducing suitable habitat for many large grazing animals that formed the foundation of the predator community. At nearly the same moment, skilled human hunters entered ecosystems already experiencing mounting ecological strain. Prey populations faced pressure from environmental transformation, while another highly capable predator joined an already crowded food web. Together, these influences created conditions unlike those encountered during the previous millions of years. For the dog family, one struggle had already ended long before these final events unfolded. The Borophaginae had disappeared between roughly 2 million and 4 million years earlier, their long decline completed through evolutionary pressures that had reshaped predator communities over immense spans of time. Only the most adaptable descendants of the surviving Caninae remained. Even those resilient hunters now confronted a combination of environmental disruption and human competition that exceeded the challenges faced by their distant ancestors. The fate of Smilodon carried even broader significance. Its extinction marked the disappearance of every saber-toothed cat lineage on Earth. The Mechaerodonts had persisted through countless climatic cycles and evolutionary changes, tracing their ancestry back to the earliest true cats that entered North America during the Miocene. Across 20 million years, they diversified into many forms, occupied numerous ecological roles, and produced some of the most specialized predators ever to walk the continent. With the loss of Smilodon, that entire branch of feline evolution came to its permanent conclusion. The dire wolf vanished as well, leaving no living descendants. Yet the canine as a whole endured. Gray wolves, coyotes, and foxes survived the late Pleistocene extinction event, carrying forward the only remaining branch of the dog family that had successfully weathered both ancient competition among predators and the arrival of humans. Their persistence reflected the remarkable flexibility that had shaped their history over millions of years. Looking across the full sweep of this story, the final balance becomes clear. Two entire dog subfamilies had already faded into extinction. Every saber-toothed cat lineage disappeared. The dire wolf followed them into history. Still living today are the gray wolf, the coyote, and the fox, quiet heirs to an evolutionary contest that lasted 20 million years and transformed the predators of North America forever. When the great Ice Age extinctions had passed, the continent was left with fewer large predators than before. Entire branches of the evolutionary tree had vanished, yet the deepest solutions forged during the ancient rivalry endured. They continued through the gray wolf and the domestic cat, each carrying forward behaviors shaped across millions of years. Their bodies, instincts, and social patterns preserved strategies that had already been tested through an immense stretch of geological history. The gray wolf did not emerge as an entirely new kind of hunter after the late Pleistocene. It belonged to the same canine lineage that had persisted through the long competition with the cats. The principles that had allowed those ancestors to survive remained fundamentally unchanged. Cooperation, endurance, communication, and shared responsibility for raising young continued defining the wolf's success. These qualities became part of its inherited biology through countless generations of natural selection, remaining deeply rooted long after the predators that once challenged them had disappeared. The structure of a wolf pack reflects this ancient inheritance. Coordinated hunts depend upon individuals responding to one another with remarkable precision while maintaining stable social relationships within the group. Hierarchies help reduce conflict and organize responsibilities during travel, hunting, and the care of offspring. These patterns are far more than habits passed from one generation to the next. They arise from inherited behavioral programs shaped by millions of years living in environments where coordinated groups could accomplish what solitary hunters often could not. The domestic cat followed a different path into the modern world. Descending from the African wildcat around 10,000 years ago, it nevertheless retains anatomical features inherited from the much older felid lineage that entered North America during the Miocene. Retractable claws remain perfectly suited for gripping prey at the final instant of an attack. Flexible shoulders, powerful hind limbs, and a crouched hunting posture continue supporting sudden bursts of speed over short distances. Even household cats, raised entirely indoors, display an instinctive sequence of stalking, pausing, and pouncing that appears without formal teaching. These actions arise from nervous systems refined across tens of millions of years. A kitten lowering its body before springing toward a rolling toy is expressing the same fundamental motor pattern that guided distant feline ancestors as they hunted small mammals across Miocene landscapes. Domestic life has changed the setting, yet the underlying program remains astonishingly consistent. Evolution preserved an effective design because each generation inherited it from the one before. Dogs reveal their history through different behaviors. Many domestic dogs seek companionship almost continuously, forming strong emotional bonds with both people and other animals. Isolation often produces visible distress, while cooperation brings confidence and stability. These tendencies echo the social dependence of their wolf ancestors, whose survival relied upon remaining connected with the pack. Living together was not merely convenient, it became one of the defining characteristics of the lineage itself. When cats and dogs share modern homes, their interactions often appear to reflect simple differences in personality or upbringing. The fossil record offers a deeper perspective. Stalking, chasing, cautious observation, cooperative behavior, and social negotiation all rest upon foundations established through 20 million years of separate evolutionary history. The Ice Age preserved more than two successful species. It carried forward two enduring strategies, refined through ancient competition, and now meeting each day in living rooms, backyards, and quiet corners beside the people who welcomed both into their lives. One discovery stands apart from nearly everything the fossil record has revealed about the long contest between cats and dogs. The greatest surprise was never that the arrival of cats influenced the destiny of dogs. Evolutionary theory had long suggested that competing predators should affect one another. What emerged from the evidence was something far less expected, a pattern that flowed overwhelmingly in one direction. Competitive ecology usually predicts a form of balance. When two predator lineages rely upon many of the same prey animals, each should limit the success of the other. Diversity rises and falls together as both groups respond to shared resources and shared pressures. Neither side remains completely untouched because every gain by one competitor reduces opportunities for the other. This mutual restraint forms the standard expectation for long periods of ecological coexistence. The statistical analysis conducted by Daniele Silvestro and colleagues revealed a striking departure from that pattern. After true cats entered North America, the diversification of dogs slowed while extinction rates increased across multiple canid lineages. At the same time, researchers detected no comparable relationship flowing in the opposite direction. The presence of dogs showed no measurable influence upon the diversification of felids. Across millions of years, the evolutionary pressure consistently pointed in one direction, with cats shaping the history of dogs while remaining largely unaffected themselves. This pattern does not imply that every encounter favored a cat. Individual confrontations could end in many different ways, depending upon age, health, numbers, and circumstance. The deeper finding concerns reproduction across immense spans of time. Felids appear to have converted available resources into surviving offspring with greater efficiency under the ecological conditions developing across the Miocene and Pliocene. In evolutionary ecology, that persistent advantage defines the stronger competitor even when no single battle determines the outcome. Seen from this perspective, the disappearance of roughly 40 dog species acquires a different meaning. Climate shifts certainly altered habitats, prey communities, and opportunities for survival. Those influences remained important throughout the history of North America. Even so, the fossil evidence indicates that another force operated alongside environmental change. Dogs repeatedly encountered a competitor whose hunting strategy aligned exceptionally well with the landscapes emerging across the continent. Extinction became the cumulative consequence of countless generations facing those combined pressures. This conclusion does not establish an absolute hierarchy between cats and dogs. The surviving members of the Caninae demonstrate exactly the opposite lesson. Their persistence came through flexibility instead of direct competition. Cooperative hunting, endurance, varied diets, and broad ecological tolerance allowed them to occupy opportunities that felids did not fully exploit. They endured because they gradually emphasized different strengths instead of contesting every ecological role where cats excelled. Viewed across 20 million years, the rivalry takes on a distinctive shape. An established dog lineage encountered an invading group whose anatomy and hunting behavior consistently fit the changing environment with remarkable effectiveness. One branch steadily lost diversity, while the other expanded into new forms. The enduring descendants of the dog family ultimately survived by following a separate evolutionary path, preserving their own strategy instead of overcoming the one that had gradually transformed North America's ancient predator community. The long contest between cats and dogs did not belong to North America alone. Similar encounters unfolded across other continents, shaped by different landscapes and different evolutionary histories. Comparing those regions reveals that the North American experience was unusual, not because cats and dogs competed there, but because the circumstances surrounding their meeting were unlike those found elsewhere in the world. Across Africa, large cats and members of the dog family developed alongside one another over immense spans of time. Lions, leopards, cheetahs, African wild dogs, jackals, and hyenas gradually settled into distinct ecological roles while sharing many of the same environments. Their prey evolved under the influence of this entire community from the beginning, adapting to a predator guild that had developed together across countless generations. Competition certainly existed, yet no comparable wave of one-directional extinction erased entire branches of the dog family as it had in North America. This contrast may reflect the importance of shared evolutionary history. When predators and prey change together across millions of years, each adaptation creates opportunities for further adjustment by the others. Ecological relationships become established gradually, allowing different hunting strategies to persist side by side. Africa illustrates how long periods of coevolution can produce a stable balance, even among formidable competitors occupying many overlapping habitats. Eurasia presents another variation on the same theme. The ancestral felids that eventually gave rise to Pseudoelurus occupied those landscapes, while early members of the dog family expanded outward from North America. Neither lineage entered an ecosystem already perfected by the other. Instead, both spread, diversified, and adapted while sharing changing environments across broad regions. Their descendants eventually produced the rich communities of wild cats, wolves, foxes, and other carnivores that continue inhabiting Eurasia today, demonstrating a different evolutionary outcome from the one recorded across North America. That comparison makes the North American record especially valuable. An established continent dominated by diverse dog lineages encountered true cats for the first time after millions of years following separate evolutionary paths. The newcomers entered ecosystems where the resident predators had never previously faced such competitors. Fossils reveal the consequences with unusual clarity. Diversity among several dog branches steadily declined while felids expanded into new forms, creating one of the clearest known examples of competitive displacement preserved anywhere in the mammalian fossil record. Eventually, the gray wolf spread outward from North America, crossing into Eurasia and later reaching Africa. It carried with it inherited behavioral traits shaped during the earlier struggle. Cooperative hunting, strong social bonds, and coordinated movement had become deeply embedded within the lineage long before it entered continents where the original conditions responsible for those adaptations no longer existed. Evolution had already refined those solutions, and they remained part of the wolf's biology because they continued supporting survival in changing environments. Viewed from a global perspective, the story reaches beyond the relationship between familiar household companions. It becomes an illustration of how different predator designs respond when they occupy the same ecological space under contrasting historical conditions. Some regions produced long lasting coexistence. North America recorded widespread displacement followed by extinction. Together, these continents reveal that evolution does not follow a single path. It responds to history, opportunity, and timing, leaving every landscape with its own distinctive record written across millions of years. The ancient contest did not end when the last great predators disappeared from the wild. Instead, its surviving branches entered an entirely different landscape, one shaped by human settlements instead of shifting grasslands and forests. Wolves and wildcats reached that new world through separate paths, carrying with them behavioral legacies forged long before people became part of their story. The ancestors of domestic dogs emerged from gray wolves around 15,000 years ago. Many researchers conclude that this relationship began near camps occupied by hunter-gatherers, where wolves gained access to discarded carcasses and leftover food. Individuals able to tolerate the presence of humans gained new opportunities, while people benefited from the keen senses and cooperative behavior of nearby wolves. Such a partnership became possible because the Caninae lineage already possessed remarkable social flexibility. Living within organized groups, responding to hierarchy, and maintaining strong social bonds had been refined through millions of years before humans ever appeared. Domestic cats entered human communities through a different sequence of events. Around 10,000 years ago, early farming societies within the Fertile Crescent stored harvested grain in growing settlements. Those stores attracted rodents, and rodents attracted African wildcats. Wildcats capable of remaining near people without excessive fear gained reliable hunting grounds, while human communities accepted their presence because they reduced destructive rodent populations. Unlike the gradual partnership that developed with wolves, this relationship required little direct management. Mutual tolerance alone proved sufficient for both species to benefit. These contrasting histories reflect much older evolutionary strategies. Dogs approached humans through social attachment because their ancestors had already evolved. Nervous systems well suited for cooperation and long-lasting relationships. Cats approached through opportunity while preserving the independence inherited from the felid lineage stretching back to Pseudaelurus. Domestication altered many physical features in both animals, yet it did not erase the behavioral foundations established across geological time. Modern households continue revealing those ancient inheritances. Many dogs seek reassurance through shared activity, remaining attentive to human gestures, expressions, and routines throughout the day. They often respond readily to leadership, forming relationships that resemble the social organization of their wolf ancestors. These tendencies are far older than domestication itself. They reflect behavioral patterns preserved because cooperation consistently improved survival across countless generations. Cats display a different collection of inherited responses. They establish territories, patrol familiar spaces, and often approach unfamiliar situations with careful independence. A household cat, stalking across a room before pouncing upon a toy, follows a movement sequence deeply embedded within its nervous system. The behavior appears even without previous hunting experience, because the underlying motor program has been preserved through millions of years of feline evolution. Domestic life changed the surroundings, yet the essential strategy remained intact. When dogs and cats share the same home, their interactions often reveal these contrasting histories. One animal naturally seeks companionship and coordinated social relationships. The other remains comfortable making independent decisions while carefully controlling personal space. Chasing, cautious observation, posturing, and negotiation frequently arise from these inherited tendencies instead of simple differences in personality. The modern house has become another setting where two ancient evolutionary strategies meet. Their encounters no longer shape the rise and fall of entire predator lineages. Yet, traces of that long rivalry continue unfolding each day through familiar behaviors carried across 20 million years into the ordinary rhythms of human life. The evidence preserved in fossil bones reaches farther into the present than it first appears. Skeletons reveal anatomy, anatomy reveals movement, and movement reflects behavior refined through natural selection. When those ancient patterns are compared with modern studies of animal cognition, an unexpected harmony emerges. The instincts observed in today's cats and dogs closely match the evolutionary histories recorded across millions of years in the fossil record. Modern research consistently shows that dogs possess extraordinary sensitivity to human social communication. They readily follow a pointing hand, notice the direction of human gaze, and respond to emotional expressions with remarkable accuracy. In several experimental settings, dogs have even outperformed chimpanzees when interpreting certain human social signals. These abilities reflect more than the comparatively recent history of domestication. They rest upon cognitive systems first shaped through countless generations of pack living, where reading companions accurately improved hunting success, reduced conflict, and strengthened cooperation. Thousands of years beside humans further refined abilities that already existed within the surviving Caninae lineage. Cats display a different collection of cognitive strengths. Their memory for spatial relationships supports efficient movement through familiar territory, while independent problem solving allows flexible responses during solitary hunting. Studies also show that domestic cats establish meaningful attachments to their owners, although those relationships are expressed differently from those seen in dogs. Instead of relying primarily upon social submission, cats often communicate through remaining nearby, rubbing against familiar individuals, and placing their scent upon people or objects. These behaviors reflect the language of a territorial predator whose ancestors spent millions of years defending individual hunting grounds. Some of the most familiar disagreements between cats and dogs arise from equally ancient behavioral programs. A rapidly moving cat can trigger an automatic chase response in a dog, while the approach of an energetic dog may activate defensive or escape behaviors in a cat. These reactions do not necessarily indicate poor training or failed socialization. They emerge because both nervous systems retain inherited movement patterns that once served their ancestors across Miocene landscapes, where pursuit and evasion formed part of everyday survival. Research, examining animals raised together from an early age, demonstrates that peaceful coexistence is entirely possible. Dogs and cats sharing the same household frequently develop stable relationships, sleep beside one another, and communicate through familiar body language. Even within those successful partnerships, However, the deeper behavioral programs remain present. Cats continue stalking toys, insects, or drifting shadows. Dogs still display spontaneous chasing behavior during play. Domestication and learning can regulate these responses, yet they do not erase adaptations preserved across geological time. The retractable claw offers a striking example of that continuity. Every domestic cat still carries the same remarkable anatomical feature that once contributed to the hunting success of Suda elarus. Under excitement, play, stress, or predatory focus, the claws extend automatically through reflexes embedded within the nervous system. Millions of years of natural selection cannot be rewritten within the comparatively brief history of domestic life. The bones recovered from La Brea, from Nebraska, and from the Miocene Great Plains ultimately describe far more than extinct predators. They illuminate the living animals sharing our homes today. Every folded claw, every eager tail wag, every patient stalk, and every cooperative glance carries echoes of an evolutionary journey that never truly disappeared. The distant past continues moving through familiar companions, expressed each day in behaviors first shaped across 20 million years of life on Earth. From a greater distance, the history of cats and dogs becomes more than the story of two familiar animal families. It opens onto one of the longest scientific discussions in evolutionary biology. For well over a century, researchers have asked whether extinction is shaped primarily by changing environments or by competition between living species struggling for the same opportunities. The fossil record of North America's predators offers one of the clearest natural experiments ever discovered for exploring that question. For much of the 20th century, climate occupied the central role in explanations of large-scale extinction. Expanding grasslands, cooling temperatures, changing rainfall, and shifting habitats were viewed as the dominant forces determining which species survived and which gradually disappeared. Under that perspective, extinction reflected an inability to adapt quickly enough as the physical world transformed around each lineage. Competition remained part of the story, although it was often considered secondary beside the influence of environmental change. The extensive analysis published during 2015 challenged that traditional interpretation for the North American dog family. Examining the evolutionary history of canids across millions of years, researchers found that competition with felids showed a stronger and more consistent statistical relationship with extinction than climatic change. Environmental conditions still influenced diversity within the Borophaginae, yet the arrival and expansion of cats produced the clearer signal across the complete fossil record. For this lineage, biological competition emerged as the more powerful predictor of long-term decline. That conclusion fits an expanding body of evidence gathered from other ecological systems. Closely matched predators competing for overlapping food resources can reshape one another's evolutionary paths over immense spans of time. Adaptations accumulate, reproductive success changes, and extinction risk rises or falls through interactions among living organisms, as well as through alterations in climate or geography. Evolution is therefore sculpted by relationships between species, just as surely as it is by mountains, oceans, and changing weather patterns. The implications extend far beyond cats and dogs. Whenever a new competitor enters an ecosystem that has remained relatively isolated, the consequences may unfold across geological time with extraordinary persistence. Such biological invasions can alter food webs, redirect evolutionary pressures, and eventually eliminate established lineages without requiring any catastrophic environmental upheaval. Another species can become an agent of extinction simply by competing more effectively for the same ecological opportunities generation after generation. North America's dog family illustrates this principle with remarkable completeness. An established lineage flourished for roughly 40 million years and eventually produced more than 30 species, occupying a wide variety of predatory roles. Following the arrival of true cats, diversity steadily contracted until only the caninae remained. The ancient land bridge that connected continents introduced a competitor whose influence continued echoing through millions of years of evolutionary history, ultimately transforming the continent's entire predator community. The land bridge itself vanished long ago beneath changing seas and shifting continents. Its geological presence belongs to the distant past, yet its biological consequences continue unfolding today. Whenever a domestic dog watches a cat with eager attention, or a cat studies a dog with measured independence, they display behaviors carried forward from an ancient contest. Their shared homes now stand where open wilderness once separated them, preserving within ordinary moments one of evolution's most enduring lessons about the quiet power of competition. Beneath the movement of modern Los Angeles, another landscape remains patiently preserved. Cars pass overhead, apartment buildings rise from deep foundations, and thousands of people cross the neighborhood each day, without realizing that an ice age ecosystem still rests below their feet. The Brea Tar Pits are not simply a place where fossils are displayed. They remain an active fossil site, continuing to reveal new discoveries from the same asphalt deposits that trapped animals thousands of years ago. The asphalt has never stopped moving. Through fractures connected to deep petroleum reservoirs, thick deposits continue seeping toward the surface beneath Hancock Park and the surrounding Miracle Mile district. Construction crews working nearby regularly encounter fossil material, requiring paleontologists to examine newly exposed ground before development proceeds. Every excavation carries the possibility that another fragment of the ancient predator community may emerge after remaining buried since the close of the late Pleistocene. One of the site's largest research efforts began during 2006 with an unexpected construction project. Plans for a nearby underground parking structure required removing large quantities of fossil-bearing sediment before the building could continue. Instead of discarding the material, researchers carefully preserved it inside 16 enormous wooden containers. Known as Project 23, the collection held approximately 700 cubic feet of asphalt rich with fossil remains. Years later, scientists are still examining those deposits, and new specimens continue appearing as each layer is carefully processed. The scale of the entire La Brea collection remains extraordinary. More than 3.5 million individual plant and animal fossils have now been recovered, representing over 600 species. Few fossil sites anywhere on Earth preserve such abundance within such a remarkably compact area. What appears today as only a few city blocks contains one of the richest records of Ice Age life ever assembled, offering researchers an unmatched opportunity to study ancient ecosystems in remarkable detail. The value of La Brea extends far beyond the number of bones it contains. Its greatest strength lies in continuity. The deposits preserve an almost uninterrupted record spanning roughly 50,000 years, allowing scientists to observe gradual biological change within a single location. Body size, tooth wear, population structure, prey availability, and ecological relationships can all be traced across thousands of generations. Very few fossil sites provide such an extensive window into the lives of an entire predator community occupying the same landscape through changing environmental conditions. There is a striking contrast between the modern city and the ancient archive beneath it. Streets crowded with traffic now cover evidence of predators whose rivalry unfolded across millions of years before the first buildings appeared. Paleontologists often remark upon that remarkable coincidence. Los Angeles expanded directly above one of the world's most valuable fossil deposits long before anyone fully understood what remained preserved below the surface. Many discoveries still wait beneath sidewalks, roads, and neighborhoods that seem entirely ordinary. Somewhere beneath the lanes of the 405 freeway, the skeleton of a dire wolf may still rest beside the bones of a saber-toothed cat, exactly where both animals became trapped around 13,000 years ago. Their rivalry ended long ago, yet the earth beneath one of North America's busiest cities continues holding its final pages, preserving them until patient hands uncover the story once again. Some spans of time stretch beyond ordinary imagination. 20 million years belongs to that category. Human civilization reaches back roughly 10,000 years. Written history extends for about 5,000. Our own species has existed for approximately 300,000 years. 20 million years contains that entire human story again and again, more than 60 times over, reducing everything familiar to only the briefest interval within a much larger narrative. When the earliest true cats and the powerful bone-crushing dogs first encountered one another, Earth itself looked different. Continents had not yet fully settled into their present arrangement. The Himalayan mountains had not reached their modern height. The Mediterranean region was still changing through ongoing geological processes, and Antarctica had not yet become the fully glaciated continent recognized today. Across that changing world, two predator lineages were already beginning a competition that would outlast entire mountain ranges, coastlines, and climates. Viewed against such immense duration, the period during which domestic cats and dogs have shared human homes occupies only the closing sentences of a very long account. Roughly 10,000 years of coexistence represent an instant beside the evolutionary processes that shaped their instincts. Familiar scenes unfolding in living rooms today belong to a relationship whose foundations were established across landscapes that disappeared millions of years before humanity emerged. The remarkable aspect of this story is that much of it remained inaccessible until very recently. Researchers working during the 1980s possessed fossils, careful observations, and valuable theories, yet many modern analytical tools had not been developed. Bayesian phylogenetic modeling, detailed isotope analysis of fossil tooth enamel, and increasingly precise dating techniques for asphalt-preserved bones transformed the kinds of questions paleontologists could ask. Information hidden within ancient remains gradually became measurable instead of speculative. Each advance opened another layer of evidence that had always existed inside the rocks. Microscopic wear preserved upon the teeth of Smilodon revealed patterns of stress during life. Statistical modeling uncovered signals showing competitive suppression within Borophaginae diversification. Careful analysis of extensive fossil datasets demonstrated that the influence between cats and dogs flowed primarily in one direction across millions of years. None of these discoveries created new history. They revealed chapters that nature had already written, waiting until suitable methods allowed scientists to read them. This perspective also reshapes expectations about modern behavior. Evolution operating across 20 million years leaves an inheritance of extraordinary persistence. Neural pathways, anatomical structures, hunting strategies, and social tendencies become deeply established when refined over such immense spans of time. A few thousand years of domestic living can modify behavior, strengthen new relationships, and encourage flexibility, yet it cannot erase adaptations formed across intervals thousands of times longer. That is why the rivalry described throughout this journey belongs to the present as much as the past. It survives within biology itself. A domestic cat pausing upon the top of a refrigerator before choosing the exact moment to descend expresses an ancient confidence inherited from distant felid ancestors. A nearby dog watching every movement with eager attention answers through an equally ancient pattern shaped within its own lineage. Their encounter unfolds inside an ordinary home, yet beneath that familiar moment rests 20 million years of evolutionary memory, still guiding decisions too old for either animal to remember, yet far too enduring for life to forget. The fossil record preserves an extraordinary catalog of creatures that once flourished, yet one absence remains impossible to recover. Bones can reveal the shape of a body, the strength of a bite, and the rhythm of evolution, but they cannot restore the full lives that disappeared. The rivalry between cats and dogs erased far more than a collection of species. It ended entire evolutionary pathways that had been explored for millions of years and will never appear again. Among the greatest losses were the Borophaginae, a branch of the dog family unlike any carnivore alive today. They combined features that seem almost contradictory through a modern perspective. Their jaws possessed immense bone-crushing power comparable to that of modern hyenas, while many species likely retained the social flexibility inherited from their canine relatives. Across their long history, they occupied a remarkable range of body sizes, culminating in forms approaching the scale of bears. Their extinction removed an ecological design with no surviving equivalent anywhere on Earth. The largest known member of that remarkable lineage, Epicionhedeni, disappeared around 6 million years ago. No dog since then has evolved back to comparable proportions. North America has never again supported a bear-sized canid capable of hunting cooperatively, while also breaking open massive bones to consume the nutritious marrow hidden inside. That ecological role remains vacant, reminding us that evolution does not always recreate successful designs after they vanish. The disappearance of Smilodon marked another ending, just as profound. Saber-toothed predators had been evolving since the earliest Machairodonts of the Miocene, gradually refining elongated canine teeth across numerous successive species. Generation after generation shaped that distinctive hunting strategy until it reached its most celebrated expression within Smilodon, whose impressive upper canines measured roughly 7 inches in length. With its extinction, an evolutionary experiment spanning nearly 20 million years came to a permanent close. No descendant remained to continue refining that remarkable anatomical design. Each extinct lineage represented far more than a unique collection of physical traits. Every species embodied a successful solution to particular ecological challenges, tested repeatedly through natural selection across immense spans of time. Their specialized bodies reflected equally specialized ways of hunting, feeding, reproducing, and surviving within changing environments. When those lineages disappeared, those carefully refined solutions disappeared alongside them, leaving branches of life's history permanently incomplete. Conservation biology describes this idea through the concept of evolutionary distinctiveness. Species are not equal in the amount of evolutionary history they preserve. Some belong to branches surrounded by many close relatives, while others stand almost alone, representing unique chapters within the tree of life. Judged through that perspective, the Borophaginae carried an extraordinary inheritance. Their extinction removed an entire branch whose closest modern relatives cannot reproduce the distinctive biology accumulated across millions of years. Even the richest fossil sites cannot fully restore what vanished. Skeletons preserve proportions, muscle attachments, growth patterns, and evidence of injury or disease. They remain unable to reveal the sounds these animals produced, the details of their social relationships, or the daily routines that unfolded beyond the reach of preservation. The bone crushing dogs left behind their remarkable skeletons, and through those fossils, they continue teaching us about evolution. The living world they inhabited, the voices they exchanged, and the countless ordinary moments of their existence passed away with them, leaving only stone to carry their memory forward. There is a remarkable idea hidden within ordinary moments shared with familiar animals. A cat resting on a windowsill or a dog waiting beside a doorway appears entirely at home in the modern world, yet both carry behavioral patterns shaped across geological ages. Those patterns are not memories in the human sense. Neither animal recalls vanished continents, extinct predators, or ancient grasslands. What survives is something deeper, embedded within the architecture of the nervous system itself. Instinct may be understood as evolution's enduring memory. Across countless generations, natural selection favors behaviors that repeatedly improve survival and reproduction. Over immense spans of time, those successful responses become woven into development so thoroughly that descendants express them without ever encountering the original conditions that produced them. The environment changes, competitors disappear, and entire ecosystems vanish, while the inherited behavioral framework continues guiding movement and decision making. A domestic cat has never confronted a Borophagus beside the remains of a large prey animal. It has never relied upon retractable claws to secure a struggling horse across the Miocene plains. It has never stood as the solitary apex predator within an ecosystem gradually won from another carnivore family through millions of years of competition. Yet the precision of its stalking movements, the measured timing of its pounce, and the automatic extension of its claws all reflect motor programs assembled during that distant history. Ancient selection still shapes actions performed inside kitchens, hallways, and quiet corners of ordinary homes. The same continuity appears within the dog. No domestic companion has depended upon a coordinated pack to overcome the advantages of a rival ambush hunter living beside it. None has experienced the evolutionary contest that rewarded increasingly sophisticated cooperation among ancestral canids. Even so, dogs naturally seek companionship, monitor the expressions of familiar people, and often become distressed by prolonged isolation. Their remarkable attentiveness did not emerge by accident during domestication. It rests upon behavioral foundations constructed through selection long before humans entered the story. From a philosophical perspective, an interesting possibility emerges. Learning the fossil history behind these familiar behaviors may not alter the experience of living with cats or dogs. They remain affectionate companions, playful partners, and trusted members of many households. Knowledge of their evolutionary past changes something else instead. It transforms the meaning carried by actions that once seemed ordinary, revealing them as expressions of biological histories extending across immense reaches of time. A cat crossing a room with patient precision becomes more than a graceful household companion. Each deliberate movement reflects an ancient predatory strategy refined across millions of years before any human dwelling existed. A dog turning toward its owner after hearing an unfamiliar sound becomes more than a simple display of loyalty. That glance expresses the social solution developed by generations of canids whose survival depended upon cooperation within closely connected groups. The rivalry explored throughout this journey did not vanish. When cats and dogs entered human homes, its dramatic consequences gradually faded from extinction and territorial conquest into gestures almost too familiar to notice. Evolution rarely discards successful designs without reason. It carries them forward, reshaping their expression as circumstances change while preserving the deeper structures that first made them successful. The ancient contest continues in forms gentle enough to share a household, yet every careful stalk and every searching glance still arises from the same enduring inheritance written across 20 million years of life. Human beings entered this story remarkably late. The long contest between cats and dogs unfolded across millions of years before our own species appeared, and nearly all of it passed without a single human witness. By the time people began spreading across the world, the rivalry had already shaped countless generations of predators. We encountered only the survivors, never realizing that they carried within them the outcome of an evolutionary history older than humanity itself. The partnership between people and these animals occupies only a brief interval beside that immense timeline. Dogs began accompanying human communities roughly 15,000 years ago, while cats gradually settled alongside agricultural societies several thousand years later. Compared with 20 million years of competition, adaptation, and natural selection, those relationships belong almost to the present day. Humanity welcomed two successful predator lineages into homes and villages without knowing the remarkable journey that had already prepared them for entirely different lives. Our presence altered that journey in meaningful ways. Domestication introduced selective pressures unlike anything either lineage had previously encountered. For dogs, cooperation within hunting packs gradually expanded into cooperation with human families. Their ability to interpret social signals, maintain close bonds, and coordinate with companions became increasingly valuable within a new ecological partnership. Cats experienced a different transformation. Their territorial instincts, once directed towards securing hunting grounds and defending resources, adapted to environments shaped by human settlements, where controlling rodents and navigating shared domestic spaces brought new opportunities for survival. Those changes did not erase the behaviors already written into either lineage. Instead, domestication added another chapter above a much older foundation. Ancient responses remain ready whenever familiar situations awaken them. A rapidly moving object still invites pursuit. A concealed corner still encourages careful observation. Sudden uncertainty may still produce hesitation before action. Territorial boundaries continue carrying meaning, even inside comfortable homes. Modern life redirected inherited tendencies without replacing the biological framework from which they emerged. There is something humbling in recognizing that these companions are not creations of human civilization. Their evolutionary histories extend across intervals almost impossible to imagine, reaching into worlds where our ancestors had not yet appeared. People did not invent the remarkable intelligence of dogs or the graceful precision of cats. We discovered living lineages already refined by deep time, meeting them near the closing pages of a story that had unfolded for 20 million years before the first human ever looked into their eyes. That realization also reshapes humanity's place within nature. Our relationship with cats and dogs resembles joining a conversation already in progress rather than beginning one from the start. We inherited behavioral patterns, ecological relationships, and evolutionary consequences created through forces operating across geological ages. The companionship shared today rests upon foundations established long before language, agriculture, or civilization entered Earth's history. Perhaps that is why these familiar animals continue feeling both close and slightly mysterious. They live comfortably beside us, while carrying instincts forged in vanished landscapes. Every playful chase, every measured stalk, every search for reassurance, and every quiet claim upon a favorite resting place reflects an inheritance far older than human memory. We did not create the ancient rivalry between cats and dogs. We offered it a new setting, where the echoes of deep time now unfold across living rooms, gardens, sidewalks, and homes, allowing one of evolution's longest stories to continue within the ordinary moments of everyday life. When the first people reached North America around 15,000 years ago, they stepped into a continent whose ecological history was already profoundly altered. The predators they encountered represented only the surviving members of a much older community. Millions of years of competition had gradually reshaped that community, removing entire branches of carnivores and leaving behind a landscape very different from the one that had existed during the height of the Miocene. The great bone-crushing dogs had already vanished. The Borophaginae, once among the continent's most diverse and distinctive predators, disappeared long before the earliest human footsteps crossed into the Americas. Mammoths wandered broad grasslands, giant ground sloths browsed woodlands, horses and camels still traveled across open country, and enormous bison grazed in impressive herds. Those remarkable herbivores lived without the complete predator guild that had once influenced their evolution only a few million years earlier. The community confronting human hunters had already been narrowed through a long process of competitive loss. Some paleontologists have proposed that the vulnerability of North American megafauna partly reflected limited experience with human predators. Unlike many African mammals that evolved alongside members of the human lineage, large animals in North America had not developed behavioral responses specifically suited to increasingly sophisticated human hunting strategies. Another possibility has also entered scientific discussion. Those same prey species had been living beside a predator community that had already lost much of its former diversity. A reduced collection of large carnivores may have generated different patterns of vigilance and risk than the richer ecological network that preceded it. This perspective does not suggest a continent in ecological collapse before humans arrived. Instead, it describes an ecosystem carrying the accumulated consequences of an ancient rivalry. Diversity within the predator guild had gradually declined, reducing the number of specialized hunting strategies operating across the landscape. Ecological resilience often depends upon variety, and North America had already surrendered much of that variety through millions of years of competitive displacement before an entirely new predator entered the system. Seen through this wider lens, the extinctions at the close of the late Pleistocene acquire additional depth. The disappearance of Smilodon, the dire wolf, mammoths, giant ground sloths, and many other remarkable animals remains closely connected with rapid environmental change and expanding human influence. Yet those dramatic losses also occurred within a predator community whose composition had been evolving toward lower diversity for millions of years. The closing chapter unfolded rapidly, although the broader narrative had already been moving in that direction across deep time. North America never regained the extraordinary richness that characterized its Miocene predators before the arrival of true cats. Today, wolves, coyotes, and mountain lions stand as the continent's largest widespread land predators, each occupying important ecological roles. Even together, however, they represent only a fraction of the remarkable diversity that once flourished across the same landscapes. Entire ecological strategies disappeared without replacement, leaving a predator community simpler than the one inherited by earlier ages. The Miocene world supported dozens of dog species alongside multiple cat lineages, bear dogs, nimravids, and other remarkable hunters sharing the same continent. That abundance no longer exists, yet its absence continues shaping every ecosystem that followed. The forests, grasslands, and mountains familiar today were built upon foundations established not only by survival, but also by everything that vanished along the way, leaving North America permanently marked by one of evolution's longest competitions. Some disappearances unfold so gradually that no living witness ever recognizes the final moment. The story of the Borophaginae belongs to that kind of ending. They vanished roughly between 4 million and 2 million years ago, long before any human mind existed to observe their passing. No tradition remembers them, no story preserves their image. No language ever gave them a name while they were alive. Their entire existence ended before memory itself entered the landscape. Their extinction differed from the dramatic endings often associated with Earth's greatest biological crises. There was no incoming asteroid brightening the sky, no continent covered by immense volcanic eruptions, and no sudden collapse sweeping across every ecosystem. The disappearance of the bone-crushing dogs unfolded through patient attrition. Species vanished one after another. Geographic ranges gradually contracted. Ecological opportunities narrowed. Across millions of years, abundance slowly yielded to rarity until the lineage reached its final chapter without spectacle. The last members of Borophagus lived within a North America that had already begun resembling the continent later encountered by early humans. Open grasslands stretched across broad regions. Horses grazed beside bison. Early members of the cat family hunted among familiar prey. Wolves were beginning to establish the lineage that would eventually survive into the modern world. The setting itself no longer belonged to some distant, unfamiliar planet. It was becoming recognizable, yet the final bone-crushing dogs disappeared without any observer recording the event. There is a particular permanence carried by such an ending. Sudden catastrophe leaves the impression that life was interrupted before it could continue. The decline of the Borophaginae followed another path. Their story gradually narrowed through shrinking diversity, diminishing distributions, and increasing ecological pressure until the last survivor represented an entire lineage reduced to a single remaining thread. When that final thread disappeared, nothing remained capable of restoring what had been lost. The remarkable anatomical design developed by these animals also vanished with them. Their powerful crushing jaws evolved independently from those of modern hyenas, arriving through convergent evolution despite following entirely separate evolutionary histories. North America once possessed its own unique lineage of specialized bone crushers, refined across roughly 30 million years of natural selection. Since their extinction, no descendant has rediscovered that same combination of anatomy, behavior, and ecological role. Evolution often explores extraordinary possibilities, yet it does not promise to repeat them after the lineage carrying them has disappeared. Today, the Borophaginae survive only through fossils preserved beneath layers of sediment across places such as Nebraska, Texas, and Kansas. Their skeletons remain enclosed within ancient rock formations or carefully stored inside museum collections, where patient study continues, revealing details of their biology. These fossils wait with complete indifference. Whether uncovered tomorrow or centuries from now changes nothing for the animals themselves. The evidence endures, prepared to answer new scientific questions whenever careful hands return to examine it. For roughly 30 million years, the bone crushing dogs belonged to North America as completely as its rivers and plains. Today, they are entirely absent. Their voices no longer echo across open country. Their tracks never again press into fresh earth, and their remarkable jaws remain motionless within stone. On the very same continent where they once flourished, domestic cats now sleep upon sunlit windowsills, carrying forward the lineage that helped shape one of evolution's longest and most patient disappearances. After 20 million years of competition, adaptation, and survival, the story narrows to an unexpectedly familiar ending. Across the same continent where generations of predators once contested every advantage, two descendants remain beside us. They sleep beneath dining tables, rest upon windowsills, wait beside front doors, and move through ordinary homes, carrying the structural inheritance of one of the longest rivalries in North American history. The conflict itself belongs to deep time, yet its surviving participants have become part of everyday life. The remarkable social intelligence of the dog is far older than its friendship with humanity. Its sensitivity to social relationships, awareness of hierarchy, desire for belonging, and extraordinary capacity to build lasting attachments across species did not appear as charming accidents of domestication. Those qualities were refined through countless generations in which cooperation offered advantages unavailable to solitary hunters. Long before dogs looked toward human faces for guidance, their ancestors depended upon coordinated behavior to persist within landscapes shared with highly effective feline competitors. Domestication redirected those abilities toward people, although their evolutionary foundation had already been firmly established. The cat followed another path that required remarkably little alteration. Its independence, territorial confidence, patient hunting style, and carefully measured movements continue reflecting the behavioral design that proved so successful across millions of years. Modern domestic cats weigh only about 10 pounds, yet their essential strategy remains strikingly familiar when compared with their distant ancestors. They continue relying upon concealment, precision, rapid acceleration, and decisive action. Evolution rarely abandons a successful solution without necessity, and nothing encountered during domestication required cats to replace the fundamental approach that had already served their lineage so well. The interval separating Pseudolurus from the cat stretching across a kitchen counter in Calgary, Los Angeles, or countless other cities built upon the same continent is immense only when measured by a calendar. Viewed through evolution, that interval represents continuity rather than interruption. Generation followed generation while preserving a remarkably consistent predator design. The surrounding world transformed repeatedly. Climate shifted, mountains changed, and ecosystems reorganized. Yet the essential behavioral framework endured because natural selection continued rewarding the same successful strategy. The same continuity extends to the dog waiting patiently beside a doorway. Neither companion exists primarily because humans imagined the perfect household animal. Both emerged from evolutionary histories shaped by selective pressures entirely independent of human preference. Claws, jaws, endurance, cooperation, concealment, and the persistent calculations of natural selection molded their ancestors across millions of years before people ever entered the story. Humanity welcomed those survivors into homes only after evolution had already completed the greater part of its work. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson left by this long history. Nothing essential about either animal is arbitrary. Every instinct, posture, movement, and social tendency reflects choices made not by conscious intention, but by the steady filtering power of survival across spans of time almost impossible to comprehend. The dog resting near the entrance and the cat observing from a high shelf embody solutions refined through an ancient contest whose participants have otherwise faded into stone. Their companionship with us belongs to the present, yet every ordinary moment they create still carries the enduring imprint of a rivalry that shaped them long before humanity arrived to witness its final pages. Evolution rarely reaches a final ending. More often, it changes direction while preserving the relationships that shaped it. The long competition between the cat and dog families did not conclude when the Borophaginae disappeared or when domestic companions entered human homes. It continues today wherever wild members of both lineages share the same landscapes, expressed through new ecological relationships built upon familiar evolutionary foundations. Across the African savannas, lions and African wild dogs still compete for territory, prey, and survival. Lions frequently steal kills from wild dog packs and sometimes kill the dogs themselves, even without feeding upon them. Those encounters reduce hunting success, limit pack growth, and influence where wild dogs can safely establish territories. The pattern echoes processes recognized within North America's fossil record, where increasing feline success corresponded with declining diversity among specialized canids. Although separated by millions of years and different continents, the underlying competitive dynamics remain strikingly familiar. North America preserves its own modern expression of this ancient relationship. Mountain lions and gray wolves occupy many of the same regions, each influencing the movements and behavior of the other. Following the reintroduction of gray wolves into Yellowstone National Park during 1995, scientists documented far-reaching ecological changes as elk altered their feeding patterns, allowing vegetation to recover across parts of the landscape. Alongside those broader effects, wolves and mountain lions continued negotiating shared territory through avoidance, competition, and shifting patterns of activity. Neither predator ignores the presence of the other, suggesting an enduring recognition of competitive risk inherited through evolutionary history. Domestic cats and dogs no longer participate in those ecological contests. Human households provide food, shelter, and protection that separate them from the selective pressures faced by their wild relatives. Even so, the behavioral framework established during millions of years of competition remains present. More than 600 million domestic cats and roughly 900 million domestic dogs now live across the world, creating the largest simultaneous populations of the cat and dog families ever known. Never before have these two evolutionary lineages existed together in such extraordinary numbers, while sharing environments shaped almost entirely by another species. That remarkable coexistence represents an unusual pause within a much older narrative. Humanity encountered the surviving branches of two ancient predator families and chose to preserve both, rather than allowing ecological competition alone to determine their future. People redirected much of their existence into homes, farms, towns, and cities. The rivalry did not disappear. Its most intense pressures were suspended beneath conditions unlike any either lineage had previously experienced. Whether that suspension continues across evolutionary time remains beyond the horizon of human observation. Natural selection measures change across intervals that greatly exceed recorded history, responding patiently to shifting environments, new opportunities, and changing relationships among species. The future of cats and dogs will unfold according to those same enduring principles. although no individual lifetime can witness more than the briefest moment of that process. For now, the descendants of a rivalry lasting 20 million years share the modern world in unprecedented ways. Their wild relatives still negotiate ancient competitive boundaries across forests, mountains, and grasslands, while their domestic counterparts rest together inside human homes. The story remains unfinished, carried forward by evolution with the same steady patience that shaped every chapter before it, advancing at a pace so immense that humanity experiences only a single heartbeat within its continuing passage. Across the plains of Nebraska, the bones of Suda aluris remain enclosed within layers of stone that began as soft mud roughly 18 million years ago. Far to the southwest, the last Borophagus rests within younger sediments, preserved beneath landscapes that continued changing long after its lineage disappeared. Beneath Los Angeles, the skeletons of Smilodon and the dire wolf remain suspended within natural asphalt deposits, held almost exactly as they settled long before streets, buildings, and cities covered the ground above them. Deep beneath modern life, each fossil still occupies its patient place within Earth's memory. Time itself shows no preference for victory or defeat. It preserves flourishing lineages and vanished ones with equal indifference, carrying both forward into the geological record. The urgency that fills every hunt, every territorial encounter, every struggle for survival, and every extinction gradually fades when viewed across millions of years. Processes that once determined whether an animal lived another day eventually become thin layers within ancient rock, almost motionless beneath the immense passage of geological time. Life, however, is never experienced from that distant perspective. Every animal exists entirely within the present available to it. During the Miocene, each pursuit across open country represented the whole world for the hunter and the hunted alike. During the Pleistocene, every encounter between predator and prey unfolded with complete immediacy. Even today, within an ordinary home, a cat watching a dog from the top of a staircase responds only to the moment unfolding before it. Nothing about that experience feels distant or historical. It contains everything required for the next decision. Neither companion understands the history carried within its own behavior. A cat does not know that its movements preserve patterns refined across 20 million years of evolutionary competition. A dog does not recognize that its remarkable social awareness reflects solutions shaped while competing against predators that disappeared long before human civilization emerged. Neither animal knows that scientists reconstructed this history through fossils, comparative anatomy, and published research, gradually revealing one of North America's longest evolutionary stories. What guides them instead are the same immediate signals that shaped their distant ancestors. A familiar scent carried through the air, a posture signaling confidence or caution, the space separating one body from another, the instant when movement begins or hesitation becomes the wiser choice. Those simple variables influenced Suda elurus moving through Miocene grasslands, guided Borophagus approaching a carcass, and continued directing countless ordinary interactions inside homes today. Human understanding introduces something evolution alone cannot create. Natural selection produces remarkable anatomical structures, refined instincts, and successful behaviors, yet it does not generate the ability to view an entire evolutionary history as one connected narrative. That perspective belongs to minds capable of assembling scattered fossils, recognizing patterns across deep time, and seeing continuity where individual generations could never perceive it. As this long journey reaches its resting place, one thought remains. The animals closest to us carry histories extending far beyond the boundaries of recorded civilization, shaped by a rivalry so enduring that written human history occupies only the briefest closing moment beside it. They rest beside us without awareness of that inheritance. We recognize it because the stones remembered, the fossils endured, and patient discovery slowly revealed a story still resting peacefully beneath the familiar rhythms of the present world.